Hello, my name is Luna. The morning Dylan showed up. The fog was still hanging low over the ridge, like the mountains were holding their breath. I was pruning my rosemary bush when I heard tires crunching the gravel driveway. Nobody visits this early, not unless something's wrong. Or something's planned. He stepped out of a silver rental car. Clean-shaven. Dressed like he was coming from church. Though I doubt he remembered the name of the last one he attended. He had that smile on the one that never quite made it to his eyes. Walter used to call it his salesman face. All teeth and no trust. "Hey, Mom," he said. Like we'd just seen each other last week. It had been 6 years. He walked right up the porch steps and handed me a steaming mug. "Made you something special. Herbal tea. Good for your nerves." My nerves. I took the cup with my left hand. Arthritis has got my right all twisted up these days. But it still works fine when it counts. I didn't drink. Though. Not yet. I watched him as he settled into the old rocking chair across from mine. Like he belonged there. Like he hadn't vanished after Walter's funeral. Like he hadn't skipped every birthday, holiday, and surgery since. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, glancing around the porch like it was foreign to him. My porch, with its rows of potted ferns, wind chimes, and the welcome mat. I crocheted myself 2 winters ago. I like the quiet. I replied. "It's honest." He laughed. But it was hollow. Then he said it again. "Seriously. Mom, this place is too much for you." That's when I knew. Not guessed. Knew. Because just yesterday, tucked between a feed store flyer and the electric bill, I found a letter I never signed a life insurance policy. Brand new. My name up top. Dylan's name at the bottom? He hadn't hugged me when he came in. Barely looked at me. But now he was calling me Mom every 3rd sentence, like it was a spell he needed to repeat to make the trick work. "You look great," he said. 76? Never looked so good. Too sweet. Like pie gone sour underneath all the sugar. I set the tea down on the porch rail, reached into my apron and touched the edge of a small velvet pouch. Laura gave it to me for heirloom seeds. Funny. That pouch had held green beans and sunflower seeds. Today, it'd hold something far more curious. I didn't raise a fool. And I'm not one either. So I smiled back at Dylan. I folded my napkin, dabbed the corner of my mouth like a proper Southern lady, and said what he wanted to hear. "Thank you. Sweetheart. Why don't you stay for dinner? I've got cornbread in the oven and beans on the stove." He grinned. "All charm again. That sounds perfect." "Mom." I rose slowly, knees creaking louder than the porch boards. As I walked into the house, I glanced back at the untouched mug, still steaming in the morning light. Let him think he's winning. Let him think I'm old, soft, and grateful. But he should have known better. He should have remembered who raised him. This house has deep roots. And so do I. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared. Scared left me a long time ago. Somewhere between Walter's last breath and Dylan's first lie. No. I didn't sleep because I was watching. Listening. Counting every sound between floorboards and breath. He moved like a guest, trying not to be one. Washed his plate. Took a long phone call on the porch. Said he had some catching up to do with old friends in town. But he left his jacket slung over the arm of the couch. Too casual. Too convenient. In the morning. While he was in the shower, I went through it. No shame in it. A mother's instinct isn't polite, it's primal. In the inside pocket was his phone. Unlocked, as if he thought I wouldn't know what to do with it. God bless that arrogance. I found a recent number marked simply CK. Carter Knox. I didn't recognize the name, but something about it felt slick. I jotted it down on the back of an old church bulletin and slid the phone back, just as the pipes groaned and the shower shut off. Later, while he made omelets like he belonged in my kitchen, I Googled that name on the old desktop in the sewing room. Carter Knox, financial consultant, specializes in legacy transitions for elderly clients. A polite way of saying he helps greedy people take what isn't theirs before the ink is even dry. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I looked around my house. The curtains I sewed by hand, the quilt folded over the rocking chair, Walter's pipe still resting on the mantel. Cold and clean. This wasn't just a house. It was my life. Woven and nailed and planted into these walls. And now my only child was circling it like a hawk? I reached for my tea mug, not the one Dylan brought. Lord, no. But my own. With chamomile and honey and a sprig of mint, I clipped fresh from the garden. As I sipped, I looked through the kitchen window at the shed Walter built. Its cedar planks had aged, but not weakened. Still strong. Just like him. Just like I needed to be. That afternoon, Dylan offered to drive into town for groceries. Rest a little. Mom, he said, I'll take care of everything. I smiled and waved him off. As soon as his car rounded the bend, I grabbed the velvet pouch from the drawer where I'd stashed it. Inside was the saved tea from that first day, his little gift of wellness. I tucked the pouch into my cardigan pocket and walked across the yard to Ruth's place. Her house smelled like wood polish and cloves. Same as it did back in '85. When we first became neighbors, she opened the door before I could knock. You look like you've seen something, she said, wiping her hands on a towel. Not seen, I said, handing her the pouch. Fed. She opened it gently, like she already knew what might be inside. You didn't drink it, would you? Ruth raised an eyebrow. I'll test it. And just like that, the storm shifted. The clouds that had gathered in my heart began to move. Not because the danger had passed, but because I knew I wasn't facing it alone anymore. That night, I watched the sun slip behind the hills, casting long shadows across the garden. Dylan wasn't just after my land or my money. He wanted the whole story to look clean, a devoted son helping his frail mother. No witnesses. No resistance. Just silence and a signature. But I've never been one to go quietly. I watered the roses. The same ones Dylan used to play under with Walter. Back when innocence still lived in his eyes. Then I wrote something new in Walter's old ledger. On the page marked October. He's here. He's smiling. And he thinks I'm sleeping. Let him. Tomorrow. I begin. Ruth called me 2 days later. Her voice was low. Flat. The kind of tone she only used when the news wasn't good. It's laced, she said. Not poison. Exactly. But it's not tea either. I didn't speak right away. I was standing in the shed, hands in the dirt, pretending I hadn't already guessed it. What is it? I asked. A sedative. Something mild but long-acting. Makes you forget names. Miss a step. Lose time. The kind of thing that makes a woman seem incapable. I pressed my hand into the soil harder than I meant to. The rosemary bush tilted. Roots exposed. I dug too deep. Legal? I asked. Barely. Ruth said. Could be over the counter if you know where to look. Could be imported. Could be prescription under the wrong name. And Dylan, nothing I can prove yet. But you give me time. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking a little. But not from fear. From rage. That night, I waited for Dylan to fall asleep on the couch, still clutching his phone like it might whisper secrets in his ear. I crept upstairs and into the attic. The air was thick with dust and heat. But I didn't care. Walter never trusted computers. He kept everything written down: old receipts, notes, account numbers. It was all up there in boxes labeled with years and taped at the corners like they'd fall apart if you looked too hard. I found what I needed, tucked inside an envelope marked Dylan, 2006. Letters, bills, and one particularly heartbreaking note where Walter tried to help Dylan out of his second bankruptcy. I held that one a little longer than the others. The handwriting was Walter's steady, kind, hopeful. It hurt to see how hard he'd tried. Back downstairs. I sat in the dark kitchen and opened Dylan's laptop. Still unlocked. Password Carson. 88. Probably thought I wouldn't know his high school jersey number. The inbox was a goldmine. Messages with someone named Cnox. Subject lines like updated POA language and mother's capacity form. One thread was chilling. She's alone. Dylan had written, no family support. No medical documentation needed if we use behavioral notes. She'll sign soon. Just keep dosing lightly. Another house sits on timber-rich land. Realtor says $650 easy. Push for quitclaim deed first. Two will revise estate after. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I printed everything: emails, drafts, call logs, and slid them into a manila folder. I labeled Church Bake Sale, 2023. Let him find that and think he's safe. In the morning, I called Ruth. I've got evidence. I said, emails, dates, plans. She didn't ask how. Just told me to come over. By the time I stepped into her kitchen, she already had the kettle going. Tea, she asked. I smiled. Only if it's the kind that doesn't erase your memory. We sat at her table. The folder between us. You sure you want to keep playing along? She asked. Yes. I said. He needs to think I'm slipping. He needs to believe the mask is working. Ruth nodded. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Then we'll do this quiet, she said. But not alone. The wind picked up outside. The trees rustled like old ghosts waking. And in that moment, I realized something deep in my bones. He thought he was the hunter, but I've been in these woods a long time. And I know how to lay a snare with nothing but silence and patience. The trap wasn't ready yet, but it was coming. For the next week, I played my part. I let my fingers shake just a little when I reached for the sugar bowl. I paused before answering simple questions. I left the front door unlocked more than once. Watched him notice it. Watched his eyes flash with possibility. Each time I forgot something, Dylan grew bolder. He started checking the mailbox like it belonged to him. He started making calls from the landline. My landline thinking I was napping? I wasn't. I sat in Walter's old chair, the one near the back window. Notebook in hand. Every word. Every date. Every strange call to Carter Knox. I recorded in that ledger like a gardener tracking rainfall before a drought. I wasn't documenting my decline. I was collecting the rain. I even misplaced my reading glasses on purpose. Called the vacuum the blender. Let my eyes wander during conversations. Each small performance gave him confidence. Confidence makes greedy men sloppy. One afternoon, I heard him outside near the rose trellis, pacing and whispering on his phone. Once I get her to sign, we can put it on the market. The old lady's slipping fast. Conservatorship's plan B if she fights. I wrote every word down, then tore the page from my notebook and tucked it into the Bible Walter left by his nightstand. He always said if anything ever went wrong, that book held the truth. This time, It actually did. That night, I called Ruth. I think we're almost there. I told her. She replied without missing a beat. Then it's time to bring in Mike. Detective Mike Harlan showed up 2 days later. Wore a baseball cap and faded jeans. Looked more like a retired mechanic than a man who used to wear a badge. But when he shook my hand, I felt the weight of someone who still knew how to listen. We sat on the back porch. The mountains behind us burning gold with October leaves. I gave him the folder marked Garden Club minutes full of printed emails, handwritten notes, call logs, and 2 audio clips Ruth had helped me extract from Dylan's late-night conversations. Mike flipped through the pages slowly, methodically. No reaction. Then he looked up. "You've done most of the work already," he said. "We just need a final piece. Something formal. Something he can't deny or walk back." I nodded. "I'll get it." That night, I polished the silver, laid out Walter's old flannel robe on the guest bed, set the table with the good plates. I even lit the apple-scented candle Dylan had brought me last Christmas, the only time he remembered to send anything since Walter passed. Let him feel at home. Let him think the walls are closing in around me. Not him. He walked in around 6:00, carrying a grocery bag and humming to himself. Thought I didn't notice him eyeing the drawer where I keep the deed. "You're in a good mood," I said, stirring soup on the stove. "Just glad you're feeling better," he said, thinking clearer. I smiled. "I am." And I was. Not because of anything he'd given me, but because I'd finally stopped hoping my son would come home as the boy I once raised. That boy was gone. Replaced by a man who saw land before love, assets before family. And now he thought the game was his. But you see, I've lived through storms. Real ones. The kind that rip shingles off roofs and flood basements. And the one thing they taught me is this: when you know something's coming, you don't run. You die in. You plant your feet. And you wait. The next morning, Dylan brewed the coffee. Said he wanted to treat me for a change. I watched him closely as he stirred in the sugar 2 teaspoons. Just like I take it. He set the mug down in front of me with a warm smile and sat across the table, elbows on the wood like he owned it. "You know, Mom," he began, "I've been thinking a lot lately. About the future. About you. About what comes next." I sipped carefully. No bitterness. No strange taste. "Not yet." I continued, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I talked to a lawyer in town. Just a friendly chat. Nothing serious. But he said it wouldn't hurt to get some paperwork in order. Just in case." Then came the manila envelope. Thick. Already labeled. With a pen tucked neatly inside. I printed everything out. Power of attorney. Some documents about the house. A small adjustment to the will. Nothing major. Just protective measures. I looked at him. At his careful tone. His cautious eyes. That salesman smile again. Stretched thin across his face. What if I don't want to sign anything I asked? His expression didn't change. But something in his posture stiffened. "Oh, come on." "Mom, I'm not forcing you. I'm just thinking ahead. It's what responsible sons do. I care about you." I didn't speak. I stood up instead. Walked slowly to the kitchen counter. I needed the envelope closer to the light. My hands trembled, not from fear, but to let him think I was confused. He followed, hovering just behind me. Too eager. "Do certain he het won. You know," I said softly, tracing the top page. "When I was pregnant with you, I used to sit by the garden and read old detective novels. The kind where you always knew who the villain was. But you had to wait 300 pages for the justice. He chuckled nervously. Mom. I turned to face him. Calm. Steady. I think this story's almost over. Don't you? And that's when the knock came at the door. 3 short taps. Dylan turned pale. He didn't even try to hide it. I opened the door to Detective Harlan and Ruth standing side by side. Ruth wore her librarian smile. The one that could silence an entire middle school auditorium. Mike had a folder in hand. Good morning. Luna, he said gently. Mind if we come in? Dylan stumbled back a step, trying to close the manila envelope with shaking fingers. What? What is this? You invited them. Mike stepped in and set the folder on the table. Actually, your mother's been documenting everything. Every phone call. Every email. Every signature you forged. Including the fake insurance policy and the calls you made to a broker in Nashville. Ruth added quietly. You really should have used a different coffee shop than the one where my niece works. Dylan looked from me to them. Cornered. You're not serious. She's old. She doesn't know what she's saying. I stepped forward, picked up the envelope he had brought me, and handed it to Mike. She didn't drink the tea you made her last week. I said. She didn't drink the coffee this morning. But you did. Mike nodded. You'll be coming with me for a few questions. It wasn't a dramatic arrest. No shouting. No handcuffs. Just a quiet, polite exit. But that was the moment the house exhaled. Like it had been holding its breath since the day Dylan drove up the driveway. And as I stood there, in the doorway, watching the car pull away, I didn't feel anger. I felt stillness. Peace. Because sometimes the most powerful justice isn't loud or violent, it's simply truth. Revealed. For 3 days, the house was silent. Not the kind of silence that's empty, but the kind that's clean. I moved through the rooms slowly. Deliberately. Like I was learning to live in them all over again. The kitchen didn't smell like paranoia anymore. The hallway no longer echoed with invisible footsteps. And my bedroom felt like mine again. The mornings came early. I opened the blinds and let the sun pour in. I lit the old lavender candle Ruth gave me years ago. I called the locksmith and changed every bolt. Even the one on the basement door. Just because. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I sat by the window, made myself a cup of tea, and just listened. To the wind. To the birds. To nothing at all. On the 4th day, Ruth came over. She brought a basket of lemon muffins and a stack of library newsletters she knew I wouldn't read. But that wasn't the point. You look taller, she said, handing me a cup. I laughed softly. Maybe I'm just standing up straighter. She leaned in. The detective says Dylan's not talking. Not denying anything. They've got enough to open a case. Might take time. But it's coming. I nodded, staring at the steam from my tea. I don't hate him. You know. I know. But I can't excuse him either. You shouldn't. The truth is, the betrayal still hurt. You don't carry someone inside your body. Feed them from your own hands. Wipe their nose. Teach them how to tie their shoes, and then expect one day to be the target of their schemes. There's no way to prepare for that. No manual for surviving it. But I didn't want bitterness to be the final chapter. So I started small. I donated some of Dylan's old books to the church shelter. I dug out my garden gloves and started weeding again. I even rejoined the neighborhood watch group not because I felt unsafe, but because I wanted to feel connected. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just one sheet of paper. Typed in blocky. Uneven letters. I'm sorry. I don't know why I became that person. I don't know if I ever really stopped being that person. But you were right not to drink the tea. I'm glad you didn't. No signature. But I didn't need one. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and didn't read it again. Sometimes closure doesn't come with a courtroom verdict or a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it's just the decision to move forward without waiting for all the pieces to fit. I knew now healing isn't loud. It's quiet. Like the first breath after panic. Like watching the sun rise without wondering who might be watching you from behind. I started writing again. Just little things, letters to myself. Recipes I'd forgotten. Memories that used to ache, but now made me smile. And in doing that, I realized something. This house, this life, this peace, I had protected it. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with patience, with listening, with a kind of strength no one sees until the storm passes, and you're still standing. Still here. Still Luna. My name is Luna. And now? I finally understand why I had to go through all of it. The sleepless nights, the gut-twisting paranoia, the betrayal that shattered everything I believed about love and family. Back then, I thought it was just cruelty. I thought I was a victim of someone else's madness. But looking back now, I see it differently. That experience didn't destroy me. It revealed me. When Dylan poisoned that tea, he wasn't just trying to take my life, he was trying to erase my voice. My peace. My right to exist as more than just his idea of a burden. But he failed. And in failing, he gave me something I never knew. I needed a reason to reclaim myself. I stopped living in the shadows of obligation. I stopped believing that silence equals peace. And I started asking myself the question that had terrified me most: who am I when no one is watching? It turns out, I'm stronger than I thought. Not invincibly, not unbreakable, but strong in the ways that count. I learned how to listen to that tiny voice inside the one that whispers when something feels off. I learned that instincts are not paranoia. That discomfort is often a messenger. And that love, real love, never comes with manipulation or fear. I also learned that healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about carrying the scar and still walking forward anyway. Some days, I still wake up in a cold sweat. I still hesitate before I take a sip of anything someone hands me. But those moments don't own me anymore. They remind me that survival isn't just about making it out alive. It's about what you choose to do with your breath once you're free. And here's the truth. You don't need a perfect ending to tell a powerful story. You just need honesty. You need heart. And you need the courage to turn your pain into purpose. That's why I chose to share mine. Because somewhere out there, there's someone who's feeling that same cold in their chest. Someone doubting their instincts. Someone afraid that speaking up will make them seem dramatic. Or weak. Or crazy. To that person, I want to say this. You are not imagining things. Your intuition is a gift. Your life is worth protecting. And you don't need permission to walk away from anyone who makes you feel unsafe, even if they say they love you. You don't need to wait until it's too late. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is say no quietly and walk away. Sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is survive what no one else saw coming. So don't wait for someone to save you. Be the one who saves yourself. That's what I did. And if I could do it broken? Unsure. Shaking in my own kitchen, then maybe, just maybe, you can too. My name is Luna. And this was the story that almost ended me. But instead, it became the story that rebuilt me.